Yo, what is good, everybody? It's your boy Tej, and in this video I'm gonna be showing y'all how to make some soulful piano and pain beats for Lil Durk. This beat is inspired by some of the songs off of his recent project 7220, specifically Federal Nightmares and Love Dior Banks. I made the entire beat from scratch, so I'm gonna be showing y'all my whole process of making the sample and flipping it. If you're new to the channel and you like these videos, be sure to hit subscribe. As always, I'll have the finished beat played at the end of the video, so be sure to stick around for that. And recently we hit 2,000 subscribers, so thank you all so much for that. I really appreciate all the support, and with all that out of the way, let's just hop right into the beat. Before I break down the sample, I'm going to show you all a quick preview of it. Starting off with our tempo, the ones that I've seen the most used are probably in the range of about 150 to 170. For this track, I decided to roll with 160 BPM. So starting off with our piano sound, I went to Keyscape and I got this rich ballad piano preset. So hopping into the pattern here, I actually ended up breaking up each of the components into their own patterns just for the sake of arranging the stems and adding different effects to them down the road. But I believe they all use the same preset. So starting off with the basis, I started by putting in my chords. The key that I used for the loop was D minor. So starting off here, we have a D minor triad with the A down 1 octave. And then I repeated it again, just with the notes in the normal spot instead of having it inverted. And then I moved down to C major with an octave C. And lastly, I had an A sharp major 7. And I just took those 4 chords and I copied them over. And then the only thing that I did was just add this extra chord in at the end. And this is just a normal A minor chord with the E an octave down. And I wasn't really thinking too much about the specific chords or too much of the theory when I was putting the pattern in. I was more focused on putting in my basis notes here and just filling out the rest of the chords around those. After that, I took all these notes that are highlighted here and I copied them down and pitched them down a couple octaves. So I have 2 layers of these. The top bass notes have a higher velocity than the lower ones. And lastly, to round out the piano pattern, I put in my high notes. For this pattern, I didn't want to make the top notes or the counter melody too intricate because I knew later down the line that I was going to add vocal chops and a guitar, so I wanted to leave a little bit of space for those. All I really did is just added like a little descend here, and I added a few lower notes relative to those just to kind of harmonize with some of the notes in the chords. And for strumming my piano chords, I held shift and pressed R on my keyboard and it just selected random notes, and I just went in and manually adjusted all of them. So I did eventually separate those into different patterns, and for my pattern that just contained my chords, I put this EQ on it just to cut out some of the harsher low mid sounds and to cut out some of the lows. For my bass notes, I put on this EQ just to cut out some of the really bassy frequencies. Lastly, for my top notes, I put in this low cut just to kind of cut out some of the key noises. So moving on to our next sound, I went to Trillion and I got this Martin bass guitar preset, and I just mirrored those piano bass notes and I just added notes where I saw fit and just added a couple different accent notes here and there just to make the pattern sound a little more interesting. For my next sound, I went to Arcade and I went to this Chronicle Bank from the Distant Voices line, and I turned all the effects down because I just end up adding my own effects to the vocals anyways. And I went in and added these 2 vocal chops. And for effects on the vocal, I put on Fruity Reverb 2 on the Venue preset and just adjusted the dry, wet, and the cut knobs. And I put on a default love filter. The last main melodic component that I do have is the guitar, and I just played my normal guitar, and I found that a heck of a lot easier than just using plugins. I did have to do a little bit of finessing to get it how I wanted it to sound, but I'll just kind of break down my process of how I recorded it. I first just recorded this whole clip right here, and I went in and adjusted all the clips so that they were on time, rendered that out as one audio clip, and then I just ended up with one cohesive clip that I could work with. And I recorded the guitar in dry and added the effects in the mixer track. So the dry guitar recording by itself sounds like this. And that sounds really underwhelming by itself, so we got to add a lot of effects to sort that out. So first on the list of effects for the guitar, I put on this distorted lead preset from Guitar Rig 6, and I just turned off the chorus and the tube screamer. And then I added an EQ, cut out the lows so I could cut out some of those picking noises, and then just some of the harsh noises in the low mids and the mids. And then I went to RC20 and added this lush and crunch guitar preset. I turned the distortion down by quite a bit and adjusted the space just a little bit so that I could add some more room to it. And the final rendered clip sounds like this. And quite honestly, that sounds a whole lot better than what we originally had. That now moves us into these two clips right here. The first one is like a guitar hit sort of sound that I took from another project file that I had. And this right is like a reverse crash sound that's in my Horizon drum kit. And once again, putting all those components together. So once I had all my stems rendered out, I arranged them as such and rendered out the whole loop as a WAV file. So once I had that rendered out, I opened up a new project file and I arranged the stems, added the drums, and finished the rest of the beat. In this new project file, I pitched the sample up by 1/2 step or 100 cents up to D sharp minor. So now going into the drums, all the sounds that I used except for one come from my personal Horizon drum kit. So starting off with a clap, I just put in a pretty standard clap pattern, and then the only thing I really changed up is just these two things right here. So we'll start with the one at the end. All I did was just add a clap on the end of the first beat. And the fourth measure, that's practically the same thing, except I just shifted it over a little bit. Next, I added this hi-hat sound. And for the most part, it kind of just follows that basic two-step pattern, but I did try to leave as much gaps and space as possible so I could still have room for the other drum components and really give the sample its room to shine. And notice at the bottom, I did play around a lot with the velocities just because I wanted to add some extra bounce to the hi-hats and just kind of make them sound like you're almost playing them live. And for all the rolls that you see, I used the 1/2 step snap setting, and I also threw some effect tricks on it. I put on a reverse and a reverb using the 1/8 tempo setting. Next, I put in my typical lineup of open hats, the first being the Southside one. And I had it hit in pretty typical spots where my open hat would normally hit on the second beat here, and then just had it here to accent my other open hat. For my second open hat, it's practically the same sound, just with a bell layered on top of it. And this hits on the second beat of the even measures that weren't covered by the previous open hat. Next, I put in my snare pattern. At its core, it's a pretty basic snare pattern, and the only thing I did was just add a couple rolls. Then I added this perc to kind of fill in the gaps for the snare. And lastly, I added my 808, and similar to the bass guitar in the sample, the 808 closely follows the bass notes of the piano, and the only thing I did was just add a couple of like accent notes here, and then I added this reverse 808 down here. I made that by going up to the green magnet and selecting 1/4 step, and just using the paintbrush tool to paint in the notes here, and then just adjusting the velocity accordingly. So that's all I got. Hope you all enjoyed the video. Hope you're able to find it helpful and take something away from it. As always, if you enjoyed, be sure to leave a like. And if you want to see more content like this, be sure to hit subscribe. Leave any feedback or recommendations in the comments below. And that's going to do it for me. Hope you have a great rest of your day. Peace.